President Bola Tinubu has signed a budget of 28.78 trillion naira for the 2024 fiscal year. The president, who returned to the Aso Rock Villa from his Yuletide holiday in Lagos, conducted a brief ceremony to sign the inaugural budget of his administration. The event was witnessed by top government officials, including President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, and the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. The National Assembly had on Saturday passed the 2024 appropriation bill, increasing its size from the initial proposed 27.5 trillion naira by President Bola Tinubu to 28.7 trillion naira. The budget size saw an increase of 1.2 trillion naira.
The budget is a budget of renewed hope. It's anchored on reducing the deficit and increasing capital expenditure, particularly in our priority areas. The approved 2024 budget that we just approved now achieve both objectives. It contains a very significant, good increase in the capital side, a reduction in recurrent expenditure, and it brought down the deficit from 6.11% to 3.88%.
All right, there we have it, Rufai. The Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, and of course the other ministers who were there to witness the signing of the budgets, which we had talked about extensively yesterday with our guest, Tilewa Adebajo. Your take on the story?
At first, I'm happy we've been able to keep the budget cycle, because we've always had problems as regards the budget cycle. So kudos on that. But secondly, we're signing the budget that has a lot of, like they say in Nigerian parlance, comma. Extra 1.2 trillion was added to that budget, which we do not understand for what that money is added for. They said, inflation, interest rate variation, forex variations and things like that. At a time, we keep saying that it is so difficult to pay back the deficit. At a time, the government has gone ahead to securitize 7.8 trillion. So the question is, really, in the space of the first 6 months, we've spent that much that we have to start securitizing? And was that even the way to go in the first place? Printing money, and at the same time, we're grappling with inflation, we're complaining about inflation. That's why I went to Lewa was saying yesterday that yes, it's the money we are printing that we're trying to securitize now. Those are the things that are bringing inflation. Yes, also the legacy challenges that we have in our country, as increasing food prices, as regards insecurity and the likes. There's a lot of very funny, frivolous spending. Most of the National Assembly members probably will not go to that hospital they're trying to build. Correct me if I'm wrong, we have the state hospital there that people in government use. So what happens to funding the National Hospital in Abuja rather than building another specific hospital with about a couple of billions, 15 billion thereabouts, for National Assembly members, where most of them still go to get their healthcare abroad? So those are the things that culminated into the 100 extra billion National Assembly is going to get. Dr. Bati, you talked about library yesterday, and I'm very happy you talked about it, because half the time they will not go to the library. It's just for fancy. Or why can't we even build a digital library where all the materials are got digitally? You just give the people access codes to be able to get into them. But we like this government of structures. We build things to show off. Because we like this commissioning things. And half the things we commission, they will not work. That's the kind of country we've built. They will start to use all sorts of time. Mechanical completion, mechanical commissioning, and all of that. So we've been able to bump this up to 1.2 trillion. Another question will be the budget performance. Apart from other things too, that might have been put in the line item. And you see, they always make this thing very nebulous for us because they know that over 3,000 pages, nobody will have the time to scrutinize every single line item. So they might have put in those things in other line items. It's the only one the media can pick out. We see. There are some people we still pick out. And at the same time, we keep incurring the debts. It keeps getting heavy. Also, the issue of the budget performance. Where are we even going to get the holistic revenue? So, are we even going to have to print more? Because now, if the deficit was supposed to be about close to 10 trillion before, it should be officially about 10 trillion now. With the increase of 1.2 trillion that was done at the last day. Another thing I would like to also call for, I hope that projects will be executed as written in this. If not for anything, I think the citizens and all of us, we should have sort of like an ombudsman office. If you can check the budget in your constituency, and the project they say they will do, let's see if they are truly doing them. Because after the budget has been passed, there's something called the contract scam will happen. There are some people now that once the budget has been passed and been signed into law now, all they do is they carry their portfolio to Abuja and they link up with one or two people in different ministries and MDAs and they get contracts that they resell. And people never do them. So do we have a proper scrutiny on all of these things? It's not just to sign a budget of 28.78 trillion in 2024. It's to ensure that it works. And going forward, can we look for a way to cut spending? We can't keep increasing these deficits at the expense of our people, because in the deficit you're even increasing, what's the impact on the lives of the people? Look at the trend. You see, when we're talking that day, people just say, Rufai, you talk. Look at the trends. You know, I was saying that there was no empirical data. Now the minister is saying that something that they targeted for 5 million people, only 163,000 people got it. So was that a palliative for Christmas period on the free train and free bus? That's part of the thing we say they didn't plan. And where did they get the data from? They got the data from bus companies that participated. Why don't you have a portal where people can register, you can see their data? They say 163,000 people, and they say it was supposed to be for 5 million people. When we say it's another government of the headline now, they say Rufai doesn't like people. Let's call it speed. It's a new year, let's do well. And that's my kiss.
Okay, here we go. One of the things that the president in signing the budget 2024 bill into law to become an act is the point that he made. He said, well, on November 29, he presented the budget, and the National Assembly has acted expeditiously within the Fiscal Year Act to ensure that the budget was passed within the space of 35 years. He saw that as an indication of the relationship, good relationship, some people would say costly relationship, between the executive and the legislature. However, it needs to be reminded that, in fact, the executive arm of government violated the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which states very clearly that the budget proposal should be presented not later than 3 months before the next financial year. Now, they didn't meet that deadline. We cannot have a situation where government routinely breaks the law. And we're hoping that whereas in terms of the optics, it appears that the federal government of Nigeria has been able to keep to that January-December cycle, which the country has been observing routinely since 2022, that next year the law will be respected. Now, the costly relationship between the executive and the legislature, and the president commending the legislature, where there are questions that economists have raised in this regard. So this is not necessarily my personal opinion. Questions have been raised about the 1.2 trillion additional funding, raising the total to 28.7 trillion. Some people say 28.8 trillion. The president appears to be very pleased with that. But Nigerians are still interrogating the reason for that increment, because they're saying that to say that there was no adequate funding from MDAs in the budget, well, we have to take a close look at the line items in that regard. And some of the line items in that regard, as have been pointed out, do not seem to be convincing enough. to those who know the subject as professionals. For example, the National Assembly wants to have a takeoff grant of 12.12 billion to build a National Assembly library complex. Another 3 billion to buy books. Well, this National Assembly doesn't come across to us as a National Assembly of people who spend some amount of time in the library or who read. We see them as a National Assembly of persons who are just eager to please and enjoy the perks and privileges of office. At the same time, they have approved the securitization of ways and means without addressing the subsisting violation of Section 38 of the CBN Act of 2007. These are some of the questions that have been raised. Meanwhile, 0.11% of that budget is devoted to sports development in a year when Nigeria has a lot of sports commitments and the government itself is talking about human capital development. 2% only is devoted to education in a country that has over 20.1 million pupils out of school. And education being a major priority in the competitive world in which we live in. President Tinubu went further to talk about the priorities of the budget. He calls it a budget of renewed hope, with emphasis on investment, on job creation, on humanitarian services, on economic investment, on infrastructure. He made a point about infrastructure. And both his good self and the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, and the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, celebrated the fact that capital expenditure is now 9.9 trillion, and that it is higher than recurrent expenditure, which Mr. Edun puts at 8.7 trillion. Well, budget deficit, Mr. Edun, in his own commentary, went for that to say that it's lower this year. But is he aware that that budget deficit that has been that will be financed through borrowing is 7.83 trillion naira in that budget? It's 7.83 trillion, and I don't understand why the coordinating minister of the economy is trying to play that down, saying that look, the budget will be financed not through borrowing but through revenue. Well, I mean, the borrowing plan is well spelled out in that budget. And this revenue, where is it going to come from? We're told digitalization. We're told production. Oil production rate will be about 1.78 million barrels per day. Even when our approved quota by OPEC is 1.5 trillion. Even when we have not shown the capacity to even meet existing quota. So will this revenue come from outer space? When in fact, the budget performance of our various ministries has been a perennial problem. President Tinubu made the point that, on a monthly basis, every MDA will provide budget performance report. Well, that will seem to make sense. But the funding, or as to use their phrase, the financing of that budget is what will be more important. And now, this progress, this renewed hope that we're talking about, this budget, as Dr. Dele Shobowale has pointed out, I keep quoting him because I took time out to read his special report on the outlook for 2023. He says that the 2024 budget is in fact a 23% decline from the 2023 budget. So what are we celebrating? However, it will be interesting to have the details, as is the tradition, from the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, so that we do not have a year defined by Dr. Dele Shobowale's pessimism. He's an economist. I keep quoting him. That 2024 will be the toughest year economically for Nigerians. That's not what Nigerians expect. They expect the Tinubu administration to address the high cost of living, to address inflation, to address the flight of businesses and investments from Nigeria, even as the president has restated, reaffirmed his commitment to attract investment to this environment. The big challenge in 2024, as we see it, is the economy. The economy. The economy. I will not use James Cavill's phrase to complete it. The Tinubu administration will have indeed to justify our hopes. He had said in his budget speech that he's aware that the people are groaning, that the people are, wondering whether this is the renewed hope that they have, that this administration has promised. It is good that the president is well aware of the situation in the country. The test of any law is in the implementation, and the Budget Act has to be implemented. Nigerians will watch how it is implemented, and they will see the impact in terms of their circumstances, in their private lives, and in terms of how businesses function going forward in 2024.
Well, three things I'd like to just speak out quickly from the signing of the budget and into being an act. And one is the fact that the president, during his speech, had highlighted some of the wins of this budget. The first being the fact that there was more allocation to capital expenditure as opposed to the current expenditure, which is a clear departure from what we've seen in the past in terms of criticisms of budgets in the past. And so that's a win for us in terms of the fact that for this budget, in terms of the Renewed Hope initiative, there was a focus on building infrastructure. And that's something that we have advocated for here a number of times. So as it stands, there's 10 trillion naira for capital expenditure, while 8.8 trillion naira would go to recurrent expenditure. Debt service is a little lower with 8.2 trillion naira, while statutory transfers is at 1.7 trillion naira. Another exciting thing about the budget, which the president had highlighted, and I must concur with him, is the fact that 100 billion naira has been allocated to the school feeding program. Now, when it comes to alleviating poverty, Renewed Hope initiative, this is one of the key areas the president had talked about in the past that he was going to address. Now, beyond the allocation, what we've also talked about is performance. And that's why I'll tie that with my third point with regards to his statement, which aligns with what he said during his New Year's speech, that any minister who wasn't performing would, get in 3 months. That's why he had a special advisor on policy coordination would then have to defend what they've done quarterly. And I think that's excellent, because what we've had in the past is that we have sit-tight officers who are there as ministers and are doing nothing or next to nothing, just occupying space. And so the president is hoping that he would address that during this administration. Now, going back to the 100 billion naira for school feeding, this would come under the purview of the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. So a chunk of that would go there. And what a number of people have criticized in the past, that whilst we've had a number of good initiatives to address poverty, encourage more children in school, the implementation or the actualities of it have been quite vague, almost non-existent. So it's come under question because there's a lot or huge amount of money allocated for school feeding or laudable projects like that, but we don't see the outcome. There's no outcome. So I'm hoping that it will be a proper development planning process in terms of, let us see where the money is going to. Let us have a report of the impact, an impact assessment of how much money is spent, so that we evaluate if indeed money ought to, such huge amounts of money is allocated to that ministry or to that endeavor. Is it justifiable? Is it just to feed the children? Are there other priorities in education to encourage more children to go to school and, of course, to ensure that children from indigent homes are looked after and, of course, ultimately benefiting parents as well? So I think this is something, there's some wins in the budget, as we have criticized already, in terms of the budget deficit and how we'll begin to pay back, and then a huge question around how we hope to generate revenue. The Minister of State for Petroleum had said that he had looked forward to hoping that before the end of the year, Nigeria would hit 2 million barrels per day. Now, yesterday when we spoke to Mr. Tinubu Adebajo, it was quite questionable as to whether it would even meet up to the 1.5 or 1.6 that was pegged during this, in this budget. So these are questions as to how to ensure that the budget performance is optimal and we are able to pass the 50%, about 50% threshold of the last administration. So there are key questions there. He said that each month, Each ministry, department, and agency, MDAs, will present a report as to how they have been able to, their budget performance allocated to that ministry. And so we'll definitely keep an eye on that as well to ensure that this is being done and the ministers are able to justify their budget line items and able to serve the people of Nigeria through infrastructural development and the president's outlined 8-point agenda. Moving on to other stories. Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, has reassured Nigerians of his ministry's commitment to prioritize electricity supply in the country in line with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's electricity turnaround agenda. The minister stated that the primary focus is enhancing distribution and transmission infrastructure to minimize technical and commercial losses. Adelabu said in 2024, rural electrification will remain a priority, with plans for solar-powered mini microgrids and streetlights, while collaborating closely with discos and state electricity boards. The minister also says he has reactivated the Presidential Power Initiative, which will strengthen the national grid and minimize technical losses. Also, Nigeria's Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Oil, Senator Heineken Nokobiri, is confident that the country will surpass 2 million barrels of oil production per day in 2024. The minister gave this assurance at Ekeremo town in Bayelsa State during a grand reception ceremony organized to celebrate his ministerial appointment by President Bola Tinubu. Expressing hope for the support of the oil companies in the year, the Speaker of the Bayelsa State House of Assembly also says insecurity and oil theft are being tackled to sustain the increase in oil production.
In the past 7 years or more, there is no fuel queue across the country. That didn't happen by accident. It's a product of careful planning and execution. And I can assure you that our projection for the year 2024 will be to surpass 2 million barrels per day, and we will achieve it. When I came, we were doing about 1 million barrels. Today we are doing about 1.7 inclusive of condensate. So we can fund our budget comfortably. But we can do a lot more. And I'm already engaging them. I'm engaging all the companies about their plan for 2024 so that we can sustain this momentum. We are already tackling insecurity and oil theft. That is why production is increasing on a sustainable basis. Nigerian youth should support the president for the good job he's doing. The president has been in office for only about 6 months, but we can see the difference. Look, the difference is leadership. And the man has leadership qualities that is exhibiting for the benefit of Nigeria.
Right. Okay, Rufai, one focus on electricity, another on oil production. Do you think, or are you as confident as Senator Lokobiri that we will surpass 2 million barrels per day?
I mean, I'm confident because I want Nigeria to do well. But my confidence also tells me that I must look at the facts on ground. What are the facts on ground? What are we producing currently? Have we been able to tackle the scourge of crude oil theft? If we are able to tackle that, then we should be able to surge in our production. I mean, prior to this time, producing 2 million barrels per day wasn't a big challenge for us. But over the years, with crude oil theft and also the underinvestment by the oil majors, moribund equipment, some wells are as good as old and dead, and we've not had real new investment in the sector. That is what's caused the problem. And also how we can probably use gas. Because gas is a big transition energy for climate change. And a whole lot more can be done. So I believe it is possible. We can do it. But are we ready to do the work? That's where we fall short. As regards the power sector, I understand what the power minister is trying to say. But you see, for you to solve the challenges of Nigeria's power sector, there has to be an holistic understanding of some important variables. The first is the dynamic between the private sector, those that have bought those power companies, and the distribution network. So, Siemens deal, President Tinubu also talked about that in his speech yesterday. How quickly can we wrap up that deal to be able to produce, to be able to provide a distribution channel for the power? Because most of the power that is produced from places like Azura, Egbe, and some other parts in the country must still go on the national grid. Are we also going to think about the possibilities of having probably regional grids or state grid system to to be able to holistically open up the power sector. Then the next phase will be about energy mix. For the national grid, the problem, the challenge will be about cost-reflective tariff. Because all of these generating companies, GenCos, they have inputs. Gas is not free. I was talking to a top executive in the NNPC. At some point said to me that an official then of NEPA then back in the day said, and why should we pay for gas? Are you not flaying the gas in the first place? And that shows the mindset. It's an important variable before you get the power. It's a product, it's a raw material, but it's not free. So how can we harmonize that with cost-reflective tariff vis-a-vis what is happening in current realities? Also, you know that not every part of the country can be on this national grid system. Then can you have local grids? Yes, you're having a rural electrification project that's going on that is incorporating solar with the United Nations, a couple of other things like that. So when you look at that on the angle, then how can we increase upon that? Yes, some communities have gotten on that. Can we use wind? Do you know the investment cost in wind? What's the investment? What's the opportunity cost? Because it's a multi-system that can really provide power. In fact, most of the big companies in this country are already going off-grid, having their own little power stations to be able to cater for their power needs. So I think to be able to help the minister in his roadmap, that Siemens deal will be paramount. At least even if we can get the infrastructure that can push out close to 20,000 megawatts in the next couple of years of electricity. But I will confess to you that our needs are already growing more than that. Then that would be a first step. Then when you now bulk it up with other steps like solar, like he talked about, like wind, like renewable, like other sources like biomass, and it goes on, then you can holistically have an energy mix as we speak today. But all of this will take a lot of commitment, will take a lot of money, will take a lot of state government participation and the federal government participation. In the long run, I'll hazard that what will predominantly work for Nigeria will be a decentralization of this national grid system. It will be more about how the state government can get their own investors, and Lagos State leads the way as regards their electricity market roadmap that they have. So it will be about how they can start internally, and some of them have started. I should give commendation. There's an independent gas power plant out of Lekki that supplies some areas on the island. Yeah. Power. So it will be about those miniature grid systems holistically and who can pay for them and we're able to get power. And it's been done in some estates as a pilot. Also, I think it's Ikeja Electric has been doing that based on, I think the scheme they had in the Magodo estate and all of that, that you have a certain tariff agreed upon, you pay the rates and you get power for more time. Eco-Disco and Ikeja Electric. So they're already doing that. And I think that will be the way forward. And probably the rural areas, rural education system will come into place and will be heavily subsidized. But it will also even be comment on data, understanding the energy needs per area. So the question, what is even the energy need per for Lagos, for the island, for the mainland, for the other parts of the states of the country? Let's even start from there. So it's a conversation that we should open up, and it's a good conversation to start the year.
All right.
Well, let me start with Heineken Lokobiri. Lokobiri was being welcomed and celebrated by his people, so it was a special moment for him. And when people find themselves in such special moments, there is a tendency to get carried away and to make promises and make statements to please the crowd. But Heineken Lokobiri, the Minister of State for Petroleum, should learn from the experience of Timi Presiva before him. Chief Timi Presiva, as Minister of State for Petroleum, made similar promises about how the refineries will start working by the end of the year 2022, and the refineries will have been completed, retrofitted, and all of that. But nothing of such happened. Now we have a new Minister of State for Petroleum, Heineken Lokobiri, saying that, in 2024, there will be self-sufficiency in terms of petroleum production. The National Assembly has pegged the daily production rate at 1.78 million barrels per day. Minister Lokobiri is saying, in fact, in 2024, we will get to 2 million barrels per day. What exactly is he saying? The OPEC peg is 1.5 million. for Nigeria? Is he trying to suggest that Nigeria is going to exit OPEC like Angola? Because if we're saying we will do 2 million barrels per day, then it means we will exit, we want to exit OPEC. So there is that ambiguity in his statement, which he himself may not be aware of. The second point is that, do we even have the capacity to meet the 1.678 million barrels per day that the National Assembly is talking about? Considering the fact that when it was adding up some of the figures for what we produce currently, it was adding crude oil production to condense it. So that again makes it rather opaque. And then, of course, he's pegging his hope on one, the Dangote refinery coming on stream, the Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries are being completed. The Port Harcourt refinery has gone through a process of mechanical completion. I don't know whether that is something to celebrate. What we know is the Dangote refinery has received its fourth tranche of 1 million barrels of crude oil, making a total of 4 million. And the expectation is that when that facility begins to produce, as we have been promised shortly, it will be doing about 350,000 barrels per day. And the president of the company, Aliko Dangote, has promised that by the end of 2024, he will be able to meet the target of 650,000 barrels per day. So even if the other three refineries that we're not sure of come on stream, based on our expectations, well, there will be self-sufficiency. But what impact will that be on pricing, on the pump price of fuel, which is the major concern of Nigerians, which is one of the major things that has resulted in scarcity and the hardship that even the president himself recognized in his New Year message. So Heineken Lokpobiri should be cautious with his enthusiasm, and he should not make claims that will come and haunt him later in the future. As we now sit here and say, oh, Timi Presiba promised this. It didn't happen. Timi Presiba was a chief like him, and from the same constituency, for same area like him. So we shouldn't get ahead of our own enthusiasm. Now to come to Adelabu, the power minister. The power minister is basing his own hopes and affirmations on the fact that he has conducted what he calls diagnosis, stakeholder consultation, and the formulation of strategy for implementation in 2024. Number two, he talked about the president's special focus on electricity supply in his New Year message, and he has outlined how he wants to go about it. Number three, he made a point that on the basis of all the consultations that he had carried out, this is what he has come up with. Okay, I think the idea of consultation is good because he started in that ministry just making statements about things he knew nothing about. So it's good to see that the consultative process has yielded some results. What are some of the specific things that he has said? That one, the government is going to address the cost-reflective demand by the stakeholders in the industry. But at the same time, the Tinubu administration will look out for the poor and provide subsidy. That was something that came very clear from his statement. Two, he said that they are going to enhance distribution and transmission infrastructure to minimize technical and commercial losses. That will also seem to make sense. Three, he says they are going to close the gap in terms of the metering challenge under the presidential metering initiative, where that initiative has not worked well. I hope that they will collaborate with the DISCOs and GENCOs to be able to address that. Four, he addressed the all-important issue about the transmission company of Nigeria. And he says that, there is going to be a separation between transmission and the financial aspect of things. Well, what people are asking for is that the transmission company of Nigeria that is still in the hands of government should in fact be handed over to the private sector. Because in the last 2 years or so that the government has been handling the transmission, it has been chaos. It has been identified as far as the weakest link in the electricity supply chain. So it's not enough to just reconstitute the TCN. Then, of course, he talks about power theft and vandalism. Well, Nigerians look forward to all of that. Vandalism does not help anybody. But more importantly, is for us to see the evidence of that roadmap for 2024 that Minister Adelabu has talked about. And it is very clear that he's also talking about renewables, one of the issues that stakeholders have raised. So he has shown himself at the beginning of the year as a minister who listens and who has listened to interventions by stakeholders in the community. But as they say, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. We look forward to developments in the electricity sector this year.
All right. Like Dr. Abati has said, the taste of the pudding is in the eating, and I'd like to segue on that, or just jump on that, leverage that. One of the things the Minister of Power addressed was the issue of metering alongside the transmission, distribution, and of course, cost-reflective tariff was on metering. And I'd like to just use this opportunity to remind the Minister of what was said to have been a presidential mass metering program, which he alluded to in his speech, that the president was going to, push that during this administration and in this year, 2024. In 2020, the president, then President Buhari, had launched the mass metering program to hopefully meet a deficit of 6.5 million Nigerians who hadn't been metered. And the complaint had been that in the era of cost-reflective tariff, because there were estimated billings, it was either consumers were getting crazy bills whilst others weren't paying what they ought to be paying in electricity, and was meant to be done in different phases. I'm sure you'd recall that the first phase was to target 1 million Nigerians by providing meters. They didn't quite hit the target, short by 100,000, hitting 900,000. And then to proceed to the next phase became quite a challenge because of what operators or stakeholders had termed a funding plan challenge. And so this is where I'm coming to with regards to the minister perhaps taking on this and evaluating that program so that in terms of the cost-reflective tariff, we can at least address that particular issue. Because when it comes to power, it's a multi-pronged approach to a multi-pronged, pronged situations and challenges plaguing the sector, and this is one of them. Now, one of the things that operators had talked about was the fact that the government's funding plan was not realistic. So what the government was hoping to pay per meter was not realistic in terms of the cost per meter for each of the meters that they were going to discharge. So this is perhaps something that a minister would look into, in addition to the other solutions he had provided during his speech. But beyond the promises, and what we've seen, even when you look at that of Senator Heineken Lokobiri, promises upon promises, what Nigerians are looking forward to is a departure from a promise-led government to an action government, whereby we will begin to speak about the actual implementation of some of these plans and promises made to Nigerians. A number of fantastic initiatives are highlighted by especially the Minister of Power, and promises made by the Minister of State for Petroleum Oil. But most importantly is timelines. Give us specific timelines. Give us specific action items so that Nigerians can also hold you to account in terms of how well you have implemented promises and commitments. Well, before we go this morning on the news segment, we would like to celebrate one of our producers on the morning show, Ozzy Okoli. Ozzy Okoli won the Most Creative TV Program Producer of the Year in the annual Nigeria Iconic Watch Media Grand Awards held at the Civic Center in Victoria Island, Lagos. The event-themed Roadmap to a Better Nigeria honored deserving Nigerians who have distinguished themselves in their various fields of endeavors.
Now it goes to none other person than Mr. Ozzy Okoli. Put your heads together for him as he steps forward to receive the award. Ozzy Okoli.
Congratulations for this recognition and award. I would like you to say some few words before I present this to you.
You know, when you are a producer, you are not always in the faces of the viewers at home, but your hard work is being seen from what they do. So producing the morning show is not an easy thing, especially when you have presenters that can also present and analyze. So to God be the glory for this award.
Well, congratulations, Ozzy Okoli. Like he said in the, in that video in his speech, Rufai and Dr. Bati, he had talked about the fact that oftentimes you don't see the men and women who work behind the scenes, especially producers, but they are the engine room of the success that we see and we celebrate as the morning show. So congratulations.
I mean, congrats, Ozzy. You know what it entails. You know the implication. But the thing is, I think I've only eaten your implication once. So I don't know, but if you are ready, when you get back, you have to do the needful. But it's just a testament to the kind of show we put up here every morning, you know, and the people that work behind the scenes, and the fact that the most creative program, you know, the creativity we put into it, and the hard we put into it. So congratulations once again, their implication. So making two implications, Oji's implication, Ozzy's implication. Dr. But you two, you have one pending implication.
He does actually.
Yeah, you have one pending implication. Yeah, that's true.
Ozzy Okoli's implication. By the way, congratulations to him. When a program does well, everybody will benefit from it.
Yes.
And we thank the people who keep these awards coming, both for the station and the individuals that are involved. But the thing about Ozzy Okoli's implication is that we are now just being formally informed. At a time he has started his annual leave.
Can you imagine?
Please, Ozzy Okoli, wherever you are, I hope you have not left for the village. By Friday, if you are in town, we're going to recall you to come and celebrate with us. You can't just present an opportunity for implications while you are on leave. Otherwise, you keep the account for him.
But your own too is spending.
He's spending.
Man
of the year.
Man of honor award. That one is spending.
You know, I always bro.
I know you are the king of implication.
Pepper souping and jollof for 2024.
That implication of Dr. Abati's birthday. That's the knockout implication of the year.
Yes, absolutely.
I see.
There will be more this
for
year.
3 days.
Hopefully.
Anyway,
congratulations, Ozzy Okoli. Very distinguished thespian also. And a very committed journalist. Congratulations.
Congratulations.